Here we are again. It's 11 o'clock on the East Coast, so 2 o'clock on the West Coast, and I'm just checking in to see how everybody's doing. We've passed 50 days now, and as I've been studying more and more information over the weekend of what happened over the weekend, it looks like a whole lot of folks are getting back out there. Um, I've had a lot of questions come in to me on different platforms and to Robin on different platforms about what we're going to do, what Robin and I are going to do as the shelter at home restrictions are lifted in our area. So I just want to address that and then get to your questions and talk about what's happening today on Dr. Phil. Um, what we're going to do is what we've always done from day one, minute one, and that is follow the CDC guidelines. Follow the guidelines that are set forth in our community by our governor and our mayor. Now, does that mean I agree with every single word and every single decision that's being made by the governor and the mayor and the people that make the decisions? No, it doesn't. But you know what? Uh, I think it's time to be a team player. I might do some things differently if I was the one doing the doing and doing the thinking about all of this. But I'm not. And I think we all have to pull in one direction. You know, it's like pulling a big old wagon full of rocks. If we're going to get it up the hill, we got to all be pulling in the same direction. So if everybody continues to cooperate, I think we're much more likely to have an orderly transition than if some people throw caution to the wind and just kind of go out there and act like nothing ever happened. That's what I want to do. I mean, I want everything to be back to normal. I want all the streets to be buzzing, the restaurants to be open, the stores to be humming. But that's just not in the cards right now. I've been talking to executives at CBS Viacom and Paramount, all the entities that are behind the Dr. Phil show about what's going to happen in the end of the summer when we go into our next season. They don't know. They're saying, we just don't know yet. We're going to have to watch and see and figure it out. So we are going to have to take this at a step at a time. But I think everybody agrees that it's time to do what we can to responsibly get this economy turned back on and get this world turned back on. The fact that we're frustrated and bumping against our limits does not make this virus any less contagious. It doesn't make it any less deadly for those that are vulnerable, just because we're frustrated. So what I'm saying is we've got to continue to do a good job of protecting those around us, even if we don't feel particularly vulnerable. So what are Robin and I going to do? We're going to kind of play the game by the rules. Have we been perfect? Probably not, but we've been pretty close. I think we've stayed at home and followed the guidelines, and knock on wood, we're both well and healthy at this point. So something is working. That's a good thing. I've had a lot of questions come in. Sandy Johnson says, what's the most reliable site to get COVID statistics? Well, there are two that I really go to on a regular basis. One is Johns Hopkins. Johns Hopkins has a really good dashboard site where they keep track of everything. And I've been interested to look not just at head count, but at demographics. I've been interested in not only who's being infected, not only how many are being infected, but who they are. Are they essential workers? Are they healthcare workers? And those that are tragically losing their lives, who are they? What percentage are 21 and under? What percentage are 21 to 40? What percentage are 40 to 55? what percentage are in their 60s and 70s. I've been really interested in looking at that. And, um, some of the statistics say that an awful high percentage of our losses of life have been, of course, older folks with underlying conditions that have been residing in nursing homes. So, that's an interesting statistic to me in thinking about what we need to do going forward, because this world's going to get turned back on. And if you look at who is actually perishing, it tells you who you need to make extra efforts to protect going forward. If a high percentage of these deaths have come from those in their 60s and 70s and those that are residing in nursing homes, that tells me we need to redouble our efforts to protect people in those age groups and in those living environments where they're all concentrated together. They don't live alone. They live in a concentrated environment. So we need to pay attention to that, because it will inform us on what we need to be going forward. If younger, healthy people, maybe they've had this disorder or whatever, get back out and get the world running, we need to focus on protecting those that are really vulnerable. So, yeah, I look at Johns Hopkins, and then there's one called worldometers.info, and it's WORLDOMETERS, like worldometers.info. And there's one there that's just general statistics about population. And then you can click on a button called coronavirus and it takes you right to it. Then you can go down and click on USA and it breaks it down by state and gives you a lot of information. So I've looked at that both of those on a daily basis. Susan Snyder, what ideas can you think of for those of us locked up in long-term care facilities? How do we cope with extended isolation? We will be isolated longer than the general public, even once things start opening up. How do we cope with watching others getting together, but we can't? Well, that's what I was just talking about. We have to redouble our efforts to protect you. That's the important thing. You make up a disproportionate number of those that have lost their lives, so we need to put a disproportionate amount of effort to protecting you. And the problem is you live in a group home, and so it's easy for something to spread through the home. And you're not going to be able, until we have really good testing, and we're still way behind in my view on testing, until we have really good testing and we have tests that are quick enough that they can identify who's safe and who's not, you need to be very, very careful. I understand it's frustrating to not be able to go out and have a dinner with your friends, or play bridge, or whatever you might do with folks or family, but you have to take care of yourself until we get a vaccine and antibodies in plentiful enough supply that we can protect you. So value yourself, value your life, and understand that every effort is being made to come up with the proper medications to protect everyone, including you. It's just too important. Your life's too important. You don't want to give that up for social activity, because this is time limited. This isn't going to last forever. Juna Pigeon. I was doing good with names till I got to the third one. When are you and Robin going out again? This comes from Denmark. We've probably been outside our property here maybe 2 or 3 times in all of this time. And we've actually gone out a couple of times just to kind of ride around. And it'll depend on what we have to do. I don't think I'm just going to make up somewhere to go. And right now, restaurants are closed. Meetings are not possible to be held in business because I do a lot of business. I have multiple television shows on networks and streaming services, and then I have businesses outside of television that we meet with from New York to LA. And I'm not in a hurry to go meet with those people until we know more about what the status of things are. So if it called for us to go out today, I would go out today. Um, but I would follow the rules. I would wear a mask. I would maintain social distancing. I would perhaps wear gloves, and I would be cautious about who I was exposed to and who was exposed to me. Because if I was infected and didn't know it, which could happen for a few days before you became symptomatic, I wouldn't want to make somebody sick. So, I don't consider this cowering at home. I just consider saying I'll go out when I need to go out, and when I do, I'll do it responsibly. Molly Elena Buffton says, after this is over, do you think it will have an impact, good or bad, on the way people see the world? Oh, yes, I do. I think it's going to have a huge impact on the way people see the world. I think it's going to have a huge impact on the way your children see the world. And I don't think there's a damn thing good about it. I think it's going to be such that people see the world as a potentially hurtful place. I think they're going to be very nervous. I think it's going to be a long time, if ever, before we get back to the social practices and customs that we've had. So I think that the longer we stay in quarantine, the more profound the impact is. I was reading some interesting studies over the last few days about dreams. Um, I think dreams are very instructive because I think dreams are part of our consciousness. And during our awake times, there are some things that might be threatening, and so we kind of push them down out of our consciousness. But when we go to sleep, that relaxes, and so they come bubbling up and often show up in our dreams. There's an interesting set of studies that were just done by some Ivy League researchers that showed that right now there is a collective content to dreams for people that are affiliated with this pandemic, associated with sheltering at home and having changes in their culture. And it's cross-cultural. People are having dreams in America. The same dreams are being had in Sweden, England, Australia, Botswana, all throughout the world. People are having some of the same dreams, and they range from low anxiety dreams where you're anxious to full-blown screaming nightmares. And a couple of interesting points about that is some of the anxiety dreams are catching the virus. They're just straight up, no symbolism, just they have a dream about they've caught it, and what are they going to do now? Others, they have something stand in symbolically for that which they're worried about, the virus. So instead of virus, they think about being overrun with bugs or slithering worms or leeches, things like that. And the whole idea is it's being overwhelmed. They don't feel like they're able to hold it off, to push it back. And that's what's causing people to have the anxiety and the nightmares that they're having. The ones that are having the most violent nightmares, first line responders. Throughout the world, the ones that are having the most vivid nightmares, the most scary, threatening nightmares, are the ones that are up against the disease on the front line. So that tells you where we are on that. Now, toward that end, we've made a decision. If you're tuning in for the first time or haven't been here for a while, we made a decision at Dr. Phil that in May we were not going to do a lot of COVID-19 programming. We were going to get back to some of the things that you value so much on Dr. Phil, that you tune in to Dr. Phil. I'm not talking about myself in the third person. I'm talking about the program, Dr. Phil. People have said we're just category fatigue. We're saturated. Just enough's enough. We need a break. Give us some typical Dr. Phil, some instructive, inspiring, relatable Dr. Phil. So we've done that. The entire month of May, we're airing shows that we shot on stage with an audience right before shutdown. And today's show is part two of a great, interesting show. And if you missed part one yesterday, don't worry. We're going to catch you up right at the top of the show so you'll know everything that's gone on. Because yesterday was a hell of a day. I'm working with a family. Cheryl and Dave are divorced. They have two daughters, Stephanie and Cassie. Cassie has a problem with drugs and alcohol. And so the first day, it's time for the interview, and she just takes off. Now, she's an adult, so we can't stop her. She just takes off, runs out the gate at Melrose, at Paramount, at the Melrose gate, and runs 10 blocks down the street looking for some alcohol. And eventually we get her back. But what happens? What you're going to see today is very interesting because we get into a dynamic that is very disturbing. Dad's been doing drugs with this child since she was in high school. She's actually turned to prostitution to support her habit now. Did Dad know about that? Did Dad encourage that? Did Dad take some of the money from that for himself? There's a lot of questions he's going to have to deal with today. And you're going to see her very anxious, very agitated in that chair. But this is something that I think is very relatable, but for the grace of God, go all of us with our kids going down this drug highway. And you're going to see what we deal with boundaries and enabling and working together after divorce and trying to save this young woman's life. Very compelling show. The reaction to yesterday's show was just overwhelming. People are like, oh, thank you. It's not that we're glad these people are in trouble, but it's something we can relate to. We've got kids. We've got grown children. We want to know how to deal with this and how to help. So tune in. And we've got some big shows coming up this week. We've got some big things going on that may cause us to pull some of the shows we have scheduled for later this week to replace them with some very poignant interviews about some things that are going on in America right now. So you may see something different than what you're seeing on the schedule. But trust me, you'll be glad for the change. I think it'll be really interesting. So I'm not going to keep you all day. I just wanted to answer your questions, tell you what our attitude is about the opening up, and tell you we're getting back to some programming on Dr. Phil that I think you're going to find very, very compelling. So tune in. I'll see you today. Check your local listings. You know when we're on. You know where we are. You've been showing up for 18 years. Join me today. Yesterday was it was a barn burner, and great reaction from the audience. So we'll see what happens today. Be safe. If you go out, use your head. You don't need the government to tell you what to think. You don't need the government to tell you what to do. You do what you know makes common sense. Be safe. Be well. I'll talk to you very, very soon. So